Hi, this is Keith Wilson, presenting the first part of my video workshop that shows you how to get on the road to reconciliation or personal peace after hurting or being hurt by someone you love. The workshop is based largely on my book, The Road to Reconciliation, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'm currently working on an Audible version as well. I've worked as a counselor for more than 35 years in a number of different settings with various clientele. For the past 12 years, I've been in private practice. What all my clients have had in common is they have disappointing relationships. This is how I got interested in reconciliation. It's not enough just to work with my clients on their symptoms or on relapse prevention. They also need help to repair their relationships or move on so that the relationships do not become an ongoing source of stress. I took some courses in family therapy and studied Murray Bowen's work of strategic family therapy, but it was not until I went into a training on restorative justice before something clicked for me. Restorative justice is an approach to justice in which one of the responses to a crime is to organize a meeting between the offender and the victim. The goal for them is to share their experience of what happened, to discuss who was harmed by the crime and how, and to create a consensus for what the offender can do to repair the harm from the offense. Restorative justice works by bringing the offender and the victim together. The offender accepts responsibility directly to the victim, and the victim has a chance to say how the offense harmed them. Together, they work out how to make amends. I tried to apply this method to the people I was working with, the addicts, the cheaters, the abusers, and the people whose mental health symptoms were affecting their relationships. However, I found it's not so easy to apply restorative justice principles in situations where the parties already know one another. In most restorative justice work, the offender is clearly identified. He's the one charged with a crime. When I saw people in ongoing relationships, it was more complicated than that. One spouse drinks too much. The other nags about the drinking. They both claim to be the victim. In many cases, they're right. They're both being victimized, and they're both being offensive. I found that there was a vicious cycle at work. Being a victim puts you in a perilous position. It's hard to get justice. You'll often act out and harm someone, either someone you believe caused the pain or anyone close at hand. Loved ones get the worst of it. Then when your partner feels harmed, he may harm you right back. Around and around it goes, and it never ends. You can avoid all that by dealing directly with your feelings before you seek justice, so you don't need to act out and injure anyone else. The only way to stop the cycle is for each person, to the extent that they are a victim, to elect peace instead of retribution, and for each person, to the extent that they are an offender, to be accountable. But how does anyone be accountable if both claim only to be the victim? This is where the first principle of counseling I learned comes in. Start where the client is, not where you would like them to be. If they insist they are the victim, I start there. If I'm seeing a couple, I'll work with them separately to examine their sense of victimization. However, I don't let them just complain. I have them look at aspects they might not otherwise see. In cases where one person is eager to take responsibility, I let them do so, but later I'll have them take a look at the conditions that led up to their offense. We always find then that they felt like a victim. It's important to do this because this gives us material to work with so we can prevent a reoffense. Let's look at a map of how to get from a place of pain to peace. I have it circled where we are now in the process. There are many paths you can take from here, but most don't take you anywhere you really want to go. You could take the path of denial, and you'll end up right back in pain. You can offer cheap pardon and end up in pain when the offender doesn't take the hurt he's caused seriously and does it all over again. Even the road I'm going to suggest is difficult and has many wrong turns. Not everyone ends up reconciling. Reconciliation requires work and sacrifice by both parties. But personal peace is available to everyone, no matter what their partner does. When you're in pain and feeling like a victim, the first step is to thoroughly assess the damages. Count up all the damages caused by the offense. Are there objective losses, broken bones, hospital visits, monetary costs, and that kind of thing? Add up anything that can be objectively counted. Next, have there been any emotional consequences? Has the offender made you feel bad? Do you trust her less? Emotional consequences are more squishy, but count them anyway. Finally, what are the lost opportunity costs? For example, a woman who's been with a bad boyfriend for years, has she missed her chance to have a child? Sometimes victims go through this part of the process only to find that the consequences have been minimal or symbolic. Then it's an easy matter to find peace and forgiveness. Other times, the victim realizes how severe the damage has been and takes the matter more seriously than they may have otherwise. While you're at it, you should consider what can't be hurt. Someone can break a bone, but they don't have to break your spirit. The English language doesn't have a good word for this ability for the spirit to not be broken, but the ancient Greeks called it prohairesis. Prohairesis is the principle that people have a choice in how they judge and are affected by things that happen to them. No one can take away your prohairesis, only you. Once you can take prohairesis into account, then the damage caused by emotional abuse is less severe. No one can make you feel bad unless you participate in the process. This makes you, in part, responsible for your own emotional well-being. In the same way, your ability to decide for yourself mitigates lost opportunity costs. Being with a bad boyfriend may make a woman miss her chance to have kids, but she chose to take the risk of being with this boyfriend, so she bears part of the responsibility. Next, look at the flip side, the reason you're in relationship to the person in the first place, and the benefits you get from being in it. This is only fair, but don't do it because it's fair. Do it because of what it says about you. It shows what your true values are. For instance, if you remain in a bad marriage solely because of the house, then that shows that you value the house more than other factors. That's okay if you really think that way, but be sure this is how you want to value the things in your life. Another thing to consider is whether the harm is ongoing or likely to return. See if you can spot a cycle or a pattern in the bad behavior. In some cases, problems go underground when the heat is on, or if there's been a horrendous incident, or after you complain. These are some signs that nothing has changed. Your partner declares everything has changed. Your partner is not the one to judge whether anything has changed. Each one is prone to his own kind of problem because that's the kind that sneaks up on his blind spot, impersonating to him something good. When it fools anyone, it fools him first. Your partner hasn't done the things promised. If the problem behavior is gone, but he still hasn't been to see a therapist, attended meetings, written that letter of apology, changed associates, or done any of the things he promised, then the problem is just hoping you won't notice. The behavioral changes have been minor. The longer the problem has been part of the relationship, or the more serious it's been, the more excited everyone will be when there has been a minor improvement. When gardeners trim bushes back a little, they call it pruning. It doesn't destroy the bush, it makes it grow more. The same thing happens when only minor changes are accomplished. Other problems have arisen. Sometimes the underlying problem plays whack-a-mole by extinguishing one problem behavior only to develop another. Thinking has not changed. If the rationalizations that have justified the bad behavior are still in evidence, then the problem has not gone away. He used to say he needed to drink, so he drank. Now he doesn't drink, but he still says he needs to. Guess what? He'll drink again. No fence has been built. When the government has something they want no one to get to, they build a fence around it. Then at some distance, they put up another fence, and another, so that no one can get anywhere near it. It's not enough just to change the problem behavior to eradicate a problem. You also must know the route that the problem takes before it arrives. Problems come masquerading as something harmless, so you will not see them coming. There's nothing wrong with having a beer with a friend, for instance, but if that beer leads to cocaine, you may want to reconsider the beer. History is minimized. If the story your partner tells about the problem differs significantly from your own, then the problem is still lurking. If she talks about her gambling problem only in terms of her suffering and leaves out how it affected others, then she has not incorporated your point of view into her own. Her limited perspective is still all she has. If she completely appreciated the costs of her choices, she should be able to tell your side of the story as well as her own. Your partner is withdrawn. If your partner is withdrawn, he may be trying to keep you away, off balance, or uninformed. Your partner always seems to be angry with you. In this case, he may be blaming you for calling out the problem and challenging him. He may be using anger as a way to keep you away, off balance, and uninformed. You're working harder at recovery than your partner is. If he has not taken responsibility for change, then he will not make the right choices the moment your back is turned. You're careful not to upset your partner. If you still feel like you're walking on eggshells, then maybe you're picking up on something. Your partner says to move on and not get stuck in the past. That's the problem talking, trying to convince you not to learn from the past. Truly recovering people remind themselves of the past regularly so that they will not repeat it. Your partner wants credit for improvements or he won't change. You should be giving credits for improvements, but if your partner is expecting a quid pro quo, then that's a bad sign. An adult straightens the house every day. He scrubs the toilets when they need it. He doesn't expect a medal for it. He does it because it needs doing. A toddler tickles the furniture with a feather duster once in a while, and everyone will fall all over him, saying he was very helpful. Is your partner a child? When the problem takes over, the less you do, the more credit you think you deserve. It's still all about him. When people make true progress towards positive change, they naturally become more compassionate and less self-centered. Not everything is all about him. Once you have thoroughly assessed the damages, it's important to move on to the next stage and not get stuck on feeling injured. That's one of many ways in which victims crack up. In Part 2, we'll go over many of the hazards of the road and how you can avoid them.